The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
Isn't it wonderful when one good idea spawns others? And there are individuals willing to carry those ideas forward? I'm Kristen Stowes. Please stay tuned to hear my guest, Dave Rusk, who has never said no to a good idea.
Hello, welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Jerry Renaud. Lincoln and Lancaster County are taking on a monumental task. They are trying to figure out the comprehensive plan for the next 30 years. Here to talk to us today about that is the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Director, David Carey. Don't go away.
I'm Doug Joes. The census is more than just a head count. It determines where schools are built, roads are built, and where money is appropriated to states and local governments, and also for congressional seats. Stay tuned for the discussion on how the census will affect you this year.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. On my segment today, we'll be interviewing Fire Captain Nancy Christ. We're going to be talking about fire and rescue in Lincoln and how professional our department is and what you can do in case you have an emergency and need to call the fire department. And we're also going to be talking about this handy little thing called the File of Life, which you can keep on your refrigerator that has a lot of your personal health information, and it helps the fire and rescue team if they have to come to your house. So stay with us. I think it's going to be a really interesting segment.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
My guest today, Dave Rusk, wears many hats, including being the recipient of the 2019 Keystone Award. Congratulations on receiving that honor, Dave.
Thank you very much. It was a surprise.
Oh, very well deserved, I know.
Thanks.
Although music is a major interest of yours now, you told me that that was not really part of your early life experience. Could you please tell us a little bit about your background and how music first became your passion?
Sure. Well, I graduated from the University of Iowa way back in the 60s, but I got a job in radio, and I worked at radio stations basically most of my life. But I always loved country music, and it was kind of a passion of mine. So my wife, Barbara, reminded me of this, that she bought me my very first guitar.
Really?
Which was a J45 Gibson Deluxe, and it was a beautiful guitar. But anyway, and she's the one that actually taught me 3 chords.
She did?
She did.
Oh, and there's the 3 chords.
There
Aha!
you go. So there's where it starts.
That's where it starts, all right. So then in 1975, I believe you told me that you moved to Lincoln.
Yes.
And you started to work at KLMS.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that when you started to incorporate music into your...
Well, not really. I mean,
Okay.
I just plunked around, and I learned how to play by ear. I tried to learn how to read music, and that didn't go very well. So back to the 3 chords, Barb says, well, I can show you 3 chords, and you can play any country song. And that's pretty much true. So that's how it started.
Really?
So, yeah.
All right. 3 chords, and then you play by ear.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fabulous. So that must have something to do then with the name of your group. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the name and the formation of your group?
Sure. Well, the last 8 years of my working life was at the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Oh, okay.
And I had a friend that worked on there, Mike Kimmons,
Uh-huh.
and he had found out that I played guitar a little bit. So we started just getting together at my place, and then we get together at his place. And I had a couple of friends ask me if we'd come and play, so we did. And then we asked our buddy Charlie Cooper to join us. So there was 3 of us. We were a little trio, and the name of our group was 3 Chords and a Prayer. Because if they had me in the group, it was 3 chords and it was a prayer to get to the end of the song. So that was about as honest as I can be. So they were both very good musicians.
That's great.
And they really carried me.
Sure.
So, okay.
So then you started to play at different retirement homes. Is that where this started?
Right. Clark Jerry was our very first gig. Beth Albers down there was kind enough and took a chance on us. And The Three Chords in a Cloud of Dust was formed out of a jam group,
Okay.
and that group still meets. It started 13 years ago, and it still meets the first and third Tuesday of every month
Really?
at 7 o'clock at CGS Music, which is about 13th and 14th and High. But anyway, we always joke that we got tired of playing the same songs for each other every week in and week out. So I said, well, Clark Jerry would like to have us come play. So we decided to do that, and then one thing led to another, and Beth, I think, recommended us to another facility, and that's kind of
And you've
how it
become really
started.
busy.
Yeah, we did 65 gigs in 2019.
That is
so-
quite a few.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
quite a
yeah,
few.
yeah.
And I know you told me it really was not your goal to make money at this venture, but you honestly have over the years. And so you've kind of looked at philanthropy.
Well, yeah, but we always joke that we used to pay people to listen to us when we started, but that economic model really didn't work. So we did start charging, and we charge a minimal fee.
Sure.
But out of that, we take all the money in the group. Each individual does not take anything for their time or their
Okay.
talent. So
Wow.
everybody volunteers everything. And by the time
That's wonderful.
you load up, you get there, you unload, you set it up, you play, you got to tear it down, put it back in the truck, and
It's a
take
lot
it.
of time.
It's about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. So it takes, the playing's the easy part, and the guys that make a living at it will tell you that too.
So tell us a little bit about the philanthropy then you've chosen that you are able to give funds to every year.
Well, after KLMS, I did work for KFOR for about 8 years.
Okay.
And Roger Larson was my general manager. Great guy. He was a mentor. I can't say enough good things about Roger.
Yes.
But anyway, one of Roger's real passions was KFOR's Operation Santa Claus. And this started back in the 40s by 2 radio announcers. In fact, it's a little over 70 years old right now.
Okay.
So anyway, I asked the band if it was okay if this is what we did, and they said, sure, why not? We can make a difference instead of spreading it over a lot of different areas.
Right.
So over the last 4 to 5 years, we've given $18,000
Oh my.
to KFOR's Operation Santa Claus.
Well, that's a wonderful benefit. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes. So then you became involved in veterans events, and these are wonderful veterans events. We're going to talk about a couple of them. The first one's being the Veterans Freedom Music Festival. Tell us how this got going.
Well, I have a friend. He's a Vietnam veteran, Terry Gillespie, who became a really good friend. And whatever Terry would ask me to do, I would do it. I mean, it was just that simple. And he goes, I got this idea. And he goes, I think I'd like to have music out here on the grounds at the VA, which is 600 South 70th Street. We'll have people bring chairs, sit under the shade trees, no hard liquor, no beer, no water, nice clean event. And we'll ask bands to play. And he said, would you guys play? And I go, well, sure, but it sounds like a very, very big event to me. So I said, I don't think we're going to do the very first one. So anyway, my job was to go out and find these bands to play.
I see.
And one group that comes to mind is Doug Dickinson's
Okay.
Pinkertones. He has multiple bands. Doug just retired from public schools.
Okay.
And he was the media director or something.
All right.
I'll have that wrong. He'll correct me, I'm sure. But anyway, they've played every year and will play again this year, which will be the 10th year of the Veterans Freedom Music Festival.
Wow. So
yeah.
this has been ongoing for 10 years.
It has been.
It's a popular event, and what a beautiful place to have it.
It is.
On the VA grounds. It's just perfectly placed. And it is open to the public. Need to make that.
Right. It'll be the day before Flag Day, which
Okay.
is June 13th.
All right.
That's a Saturday. We'll have the presentation of colors at 1. The groups that'll be there, if I can remember all of this, will be Elvis. Bill Crastile will be the first guy kicking it
Fun.
off. Then Doug's group, the Pinkertones, will play. Vern Schlechter, which is a polka band.
Okay.
Yeah, will be there. And then Three Chords and a Cloud of Dust will play at 4.
All right,
So
of
there you
course.
go.
Sounds like a great day.
Yeah.
Well, after that success, then the idea which was hatched to create a monthly event called the VA Coffee House. Tell us about this.
Well, this was another brainstorm of Terry Gillespie. So I always blame everything on Terry, and he's got broad shoulders, so he
There you
takes
go.
it. But anyway, he said, I think it just needs to be a small little venue, and he said something that we could do for veterans, and they will invite the people, and we'll have coffee and donuts or something. And I go, sure. So he said, do you think you can get a couple people to play? And so I said, sure. So the very first one, I think we had more pickers and singers than we did audience, which was fine. And we met down in the old canteen, not very far from, Barber Bob Taylor.
Oh,
anyway,
sure.
It was right down the hall from Bob Taylor. So anyway, we outgrew the canteen pretty fast.
Uh-huh.
And one person I'm going to mention, Patty Neiman, I asked. Patty was a Lincoln Public School music teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, a very type A, and we laugh about this, type gal. And boy, she just took it and ran with it, and she organized it. We had coffee, we had donuts, we had people giving stuff. And
Patty undoubtedly was part of the success.
Yeah, and I just got out of the way, I just got out of the way.
Well, I have to say, I went in December and I thought it was wonderful. It was a packed house.
It was nice to have you there.
Well,
It
thank
really
you.
was. It really
It was fun. It's obvious that everybody there, it was so appreciative of the event. What do you think the true importance of this monthly event has become?
Well, it's a passion of mine. I don't think we can say thank you enough times to veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, if you see the guys with the black hats in the U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, whatever it is, walk up to them and thank them for their service.
Mm-hmm.
And some guys are appreciative and some guys don't know how to accept it, but they sure appreciate being recognized.
Yeah. Well,
And none of them think they're heroes, but they are.
they are.
And so that was the true meaning. And then, so it's a way to provide music for veterans,
Okay.
but it's a way for the public to come and thank the veterans for their service.
Sure.
And we do it all over a cup of coffee. And,
Well, they certainly enjoyed being together.
right.
It was-
And we have
it's
different
wonderful.
entertainment every month.
Sure. Sure.
So,
All
there you
right.
go.
Well, we have just a couple of minutes left. Dave, if we could say just a couple of words about two things that do go on there as well as the music. The Quilts of Valor presentation. Do you have just a little bit to say on that?
Right. Well, the Quilts of Valor is a national program,
Okay.
but there's a local chapter, if I could call it that, here in Lincoln.
Uh-huh.
And these ladies make quilts for veterans. Now, you don't have to be a combat veteran, you just need to have served.
Sure.
So I just asked Julia Schroeder, who is the head of the Quilts of Valor, today how many they did in 2019. And she said 125 quilts were made right here in Lincoln
That's
and
fabulous.
presented. So I think we do have a slide of one of the quilt presentations
Well,
there.
it's so meaningful. It really is.
Right.
I'm so glad you have included
But we
that.
usually, from 3 to 7 quilts are presented at every VA coffee house.
Okay, that's fabulous. One other thing that you mentioned is the Guitars for Veterans. That's another program, a national program, correct, that has been brought to Lincoln?
Yes.
What's just a couple of phrases on that you can tell us?
Well, it's called Guitars for Vets, and you can Google any of these. Quilts of Valor, Guitars for Vets. One of the members of Three Chords and a Cloud of Dust is Norm Hamill. Norm's an instructor for the Guitars for Vets.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, you have to go through a series of 12 instructions, 12 weeks of rehearsals and practice. Yeah, you have to practice. But anyway, at the end of that, they give you a brand new guitar. I mean, how cool is that?
That's pretty nice.
With all the goodies, the stand, the tuners, all
well,
of that.
Dave, there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. And I do want to read the description of the Keystone Award that is presented every year by the Seniors Foundation. It is given to a person or group that has provided a lasting legacy to enhance the quality of life for older adults in Lincoln. And I think this fits you to a T.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on that award again, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us, and always remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Hello and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. How many times have you thought about what the future would be like, and you'd like to be able to project 30 years ahead and wonder what things are going to be like in the health industry or transportation? We're going to have that opportunity to do that today. We have a very special guest whose job for the next couple of years is going to be looking into the future for Lincoln and Lancaster County and trying to figure out all of those things and where we're going to be in that time frame. So please welcome David Carey, who is the City County Planning Director.
Correct.
Is that
Thank
correct?
You.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I wanted to make sure I got that right. This is quite a task. Tell us a little bit about this process of how we're going to go about trying to determine some of these things over the next 30 years. Who's going to be involved in all of this process?
Yeah, so this is one of the main responsibilities of the planning department. We create and maintain a comprehensive plan for the city and the county. And we do a major update every 10 years, and we update it in more of a minor way every 5 years to make sure that it's accurate and things like that. But the planning staff really is responsible for doing this. But what we do, whenever we do this, we really employ the community. We have a community committee with stakeholders on it. We have a lot of public meetings. We have a lot of staff from different departments and agencies. All help us create this and update it and make sure that we're doing it in a way that's reflective of what the community is saying to us, of what they're thinking about for what the future should be.
Okay, before we get into some specifics, I always think it's interesting to kind of look back the last 30 years when that plan was put into place in 1990. Pretty effective?
Yes, so we have had different plans throughout the last 30 years. But when we look back to where we were at in 1990, 30 years in the past, and then compare that to where we might be in 2050, 30 years in the future, it's really fun and interesting to look at it that way. But our information and our plan has been very accurate. I wouldn't say that we've been perfect, but we certainly have had solid numbers of projection of population, and the direction that we've taken the community based on what those concepts are have been very productive and helpful for the community.
We have a little video, which I think people will enjoy. It sort of takes us back in time and lets us reminisce a little bit about some of the things that have taken place in the last 30 years. You are in it. You get to play a starring role in this. Actually play a little music, it looks like. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video.
Great.
And then we'll come back and we'll talk about some more things.
You've got mail.
Hypercolor clothing changes color with heat.
It's easy to squeeze your way to shapely hips and thighs.
Schlesinger has another touchdown.
That'll do it. Nebraska has won the national championship.
I've declared a general state of emergency.
3, 2, 1, happy 2000.
Play ball.
I didn't know
what Facebook was. It sounds like a huge waste of time.
Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
Where the deer and the antelope play.
Maybe you can drive my car. Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle.
A lot has happened over the last 30 years. What's in store for the next 30? By 2050, there will be over 100,000 new residents in Lancaster County, with the majority of those in Lincoln. A more diverse population with new needs and wants, a changing climate that will require a more resilient and sustainable community, new transportation options, new housing solutions, smarter connected cities, and who knows, maybe there will be flying cars or self-aware robots. All these things are possible, so how do we ensure that Lincoln and Lancaster County have the best future? Plan Forward is the theme for the Lincoln-Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan. A comprehensive plan establishes the community vision. What do we want for Lincoln and Lancaster County over the next 30 years? And provides a roadmap for achieving that vision in topics such as land use, economy, housing, transportation, health, and sustainability. Plan Forward will be a forward-thinking document to guide the community to a thriving, resilient, innovative, and livable future. At the same time, we'll be updating our long-range transportation plan to provide a detailed analysis of the community's transportation needs. This plan is a community effort, and we need your help. Visit planforward2050.com to take the visioning survey, learn more about the comprehensive plan, and sign up for the mailing list. Our first open house is in February, so be sure to check the website for more information.
Okay, so that was lots of fun as we sort of look back and see some of the things that have happened over the last 30 years. But we also got to see a few things about what we're anticipating and some areas that we want to look at. One of the things that really jumped out at me, and I'm guessing it probably jumped out at a lot of people, was the population growth.
Yes.
And we are really looking at, I mean, huge numbers of people. It seems like that you are thinking are going to be living in Lincoln and Lancaster County in the year 2050.
Yeah, so we do population projections for these updates every 10 years, and what I can say very confidently is that we have confidence in those numbers. We definitely do anticipate about 120,000 more people in 2050 living in Lancaster County, with about 90% of that in the city of Lincoln. But we have just done that in the last 30 years. So we've been there and done that, and we know how to do it. We want to make sure we do it the best way possible, which is a big part of why we want to talk about it. But it's something that we've been experiencing, that type of growth, for many decades now, and the numbers say that we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, that's, I think if anybody's been around for a while, they're looking around the city and they're seeing all the construction that's going on. We've seen new high schools being built. We've seen the city continue to expand in lots of different directions. And that many people coming in really has an impact on a number of areas, right? So I would think one of those is going to be transportation. You and I chatted briefly about that before. So, I mean, that's really going to be kind of fun of where do you make the projections as we talk about electric cars, we talk about light rails. I won't put the flying cars in there, but it's been a prediction for years and years. Where are we headed transportation-wise? What's the city looking at? Yeah,
that much population growth and the time that it will take to get to that population number, we know that technology is going to change. If you think back to 1990, 30 years ago, I think the number was 1% of us had a cell phone back then, and you think about how that has changed our lifestyles. But in the transportation world, we know the technology is already starting to happen, where autonomous vehicles and smart cars are starting to happen. We even have, electric vehicles have already started to really show up and become much more of a mainstream option. So things are already changing. We're not going to be able to know exactly what 2050 transportation is going to be like. That would be almost a fool's errand if we really tried to do that. But what we will do is look out probably about 10 years and say, more realistically, what do we honestly think is going to happen in that time frame, and start to prepare for that, or at least see what the options are, and make sure that we're having that discussion so that we're not caught off guard by the technology advancements in transportation.
And that every 5 years will help.
Correct.
Too.
Yep, exactly.
Now you talk about the autonomous cars. I think that's going to be a real interesting scenario, and particularly for lots of people in our audience as they get a little older and decide that perhaps they don't want to be driving a vehicle. Wouldn't that be great to have something out there that you could still be more independent?
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of that conversation, and I think there's a lot of potential there for aging population, as well as just in general for the ability to get around town without necessarily having to drive the vehicle. And so this would have applications for public transit as well as for the personal vehicle for individuals. So I think there's a lot of potential there. There's some things that we have to think about how that would work well. But those are things that are already underway as far as the thought process is concerned, and we're going to keep talking about it.
How about the housing situation? That's always going to be an interesting scenario. If you're going to add another 120,000 people into the county, and a lot of those people in Lincoln, that's tough to anticipate where everybody
Correct.
is going to live. Are we going to need more housing for older adults as that population continues to grow as well?
Yeah, so we will definitely, obviously, we'll need to be planning for the physical housing of that many more people. So we're talking in the range of making sure we're planning for about 40,000 more residential units to accommodate that many more people.
Wow.
And again, we've pretty much done that in the last 30 years. So we feel like we can do it again. We want to do it the best way possible. But yes, so that certain segments of the population are going to have a bigger impact on how we do that. And the aging population is always growing. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. And so that market demand for something from that growing population is there and is real. So choices is really what we've been talking about and we want to continue to talk about. There's a growing percentage of that aging population that wants choices and doesn't necessarily want to have the large single-family home that they have grown their family in. Many people do, though, so we're not going to say we're going to force people into doing it a certain way, but there are all these topics that will be discussed with this plan.
And it's certainly going to be a more diverse group of people.
Absolutely.
And that's going to cause some interesting situations as well.
Yeah, so when you look back to 1990, when you look at the demographics, the persons of color in our community in Lancaster County was very, very low. And that has already shifted. We've become much more diverse over the last 30 years. And by 2050, the numbers are saying that we'll have in the range of about 1/3 of our entire population will have that diversity opportunity added to it. So it does change kind of what the community will be like. And it's very exciting in my opinion. I think it makes for a more dynamic community in my opinion.
Before we run out of time, let's talk about how the citizens can get involved.
Sure.
Because I know that you feel that's really an important part. You want input from lots of people. We are recording this in January, so we should let people know that that is the case. So this will air during February. There is a big event that's coming early in February. I think we should at least talk about it and a little bit about that for people who are watching it early in February.
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. On February 6th, we are going to have our first public open house for this effort. It's going to be at Pinnacle Bank Arena from 5 to 7. We're going to have interactive stations that we're going to ask people to tell us what they're thinking about certain topics, or if they have some topics that we haven't thought about, to tell us what those are. And it's going to be also to share information and get people thinking about this. It is very important for this type of effort to get as many people as possible involved, and that's one way we want to do it on February 6th. Another way to do it is we've created a website for the effort.
Good.
It's planforward2050.com. It has a lot of good information already out there. We're going to continue to update that and let people know what's going on and advance notice of other meetings in the future. But also, right now we also have a visioning survey that we want as many people as possible to fill out, so we know what the people are thinking about and what their priorities are, what they would like to see the community be like in the future. And that's really going to help us shape the discussion and the decision making.
And there will be lots of other events over the course. This is a pretty long process to go through, right?
Right. So this will take us about 1.5 years of work to get to a point where we're ready to put forward a new plan for approval. So we're going to take our time and get it right. But yeah, there will be many more events and opportunities for involvement as we go along.
I have 1,000 more questions and we have no more time. David, thank you so much for being with us today and taking the time to do that. This is a really exciting project, and maybe you'll come back sometime and give us an update on how things are going.
I think that's a great idea, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much again for being here. And thanks to all of you for being here. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Legal services are a part of the spectrum of senior services available through our 8 area agencies on aging. Attorneys can assist and educate seniors on consumer credit and debt collection issues, as well as help them plan ahead with advance directives. Attorneys can also help seniors with consumer fraud and financial exploitation concerns, and also guide them through government benefit issues. For more information, contact the Elder Access Line at 800-527-7249.
Welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Doug Joes. Today we're going to talk about the census. And with me today to talk about that is Krista Yoakum, County Commissioner, and Jenna White from Aging Partners, both of whom are involved in the Complete Count Committee here in Lincoln and Lancaster County. First of all, welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Let's talk about your roles then with the Complete Count Committee. First, Krista, how does this work with you in terms of your job as a commissioner?
Yeah, as you said, both Jen and I are on the Complete Count Committee. That means when a lot of community entities are coming together to be sure that everyone in the community gets counted. And it's very important for the county that everyone does get counted. It determines how we redraw our districts when it comes to which commissioners are serving who, and certainly the funding that comes back from the federal government to the state, our tax dollars.
And Jenna, as a part of Aging Partners, how does this relate to you?
Well, I am a care manager at Aging Partners, and so I help administer a lot of different services and programs that we have through our agency. And it specifically affects Aging Partners due to, again, the funding piece. So the Older Americans Act is particularly impacted by the number of people who are counted in the census who are 60 and older. So we have a large stake in making sure everyone gets counted this year.
Krista, then, this is every 10 years. Right. So what, you mentioned about head counts, but really what are the main purposes behind the census?
Yeah, well, it's in our Constitution to do a census every 10 years, and so we are bound to do that, but it's really important to count everyone, and the goal here is to count everyone who lives in the United States on April 1st and where they live. And the where is important because we're also gathering some other demographics, such as age, gender, race, those sorts of things. And as Jenna said, that then it determines some of the funding that we receive in the community.
And Jenna, let's talk about the process. So I understand that there's a card, like a postcard goes out first to everybody?
So starting March 12th, the Census Bureau will begin to send out letters to every address in the United States and our territories, inviting them to respond to the 2020 census. And in the initial letter, there will be 2 ways to respond. There will be a phone number for you to call in and respond if you choose to do so. Okay. And there will also be a passcode. So this is the first time the Census Bureau has really implemented online responses. So there's a passcode associated with every address, and that's how you will log in to the census website, and they will provide that within that letter as well. And then the next step in April, if you choose not to respond online or over the phone, in April you'll receive your mail version of the census. And that is, for seniors, I've gotten feedback that tends to be how they feel the most comfortable responding. Sure. So that will be coming in April. And then if you still don't respond to the census, in May, you will have somebody from the Census Bureau at your door wishing to gather that information.
So you don't see anybody really then until maybe May?
Correct, yes. Yep, you have 3 opportunities until somebody's at your door to respond to the census.
Okay, Krista, you mentioned about demographics, but what are the questions that are involved here?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and this year the census is the simplest that it's ever been. It's essentially asking for who lives in the household, so account for every member in the household, children through seniors, certainly. They will ask the ages, race is important, and just want to double check that I'm not missing a category because I feel like I am. Oh, the relationship to each other. So is this a son? Is this an adopted child? Is this a spouse? That sort of thing.
Then the other side of the coin here, when we get into security, maybe questions that aren't asked, such as Social Security.
Right, yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand.
Hugely important. The census will never ask for a Social Security number. They will never ask for any banking information, that private data. The most private really is your name. They do ask for names.
So there's nothing really there that people should be concerned about.
Right. You know, and the other piece is this information is kept confidential. We get the statistics, we get the numbers, but the specific information is kept until I think it's 2092 this information will be released. So it's very secure.
Carrying on from that then, Jenna, this whole security question is really an issue these days. Are there possible scams or things that people should be aware of?
I would imagine we will see that. We saw it when Medicare rolled out all the new Medicare cards. So I'm imagining that we are going to see people attempting to scam individuals. So what I've suggested to people is if you get a phone call from the Census Bureau, first off, that's a little suspicious to begin with, to be getting calls from them. And if they're asking for the information about Social Security, bank accounts, credit cards, donations, affiliating themselves with a specific party, the Census Bureau will not do that. So hang up immediately. Don't respond to any of those things. Always check when if you get to the point where you haven't responded and somebody shows up at your door, check their ID.
Okay,
Make sure that they are who they say they are. So they will have an ID and it will be watermarked. It will have an expiration date on it. And it will also have, it'll be front and back, and it should have their picture. And there is a phone number that you can call to confirm this person is with the Census Bureau.
Going on with, you work with seniors and a variety of seniors in the sense of ages and abilities and
Correct.
so on. Are there assistance available for seniors if they maybe have some eyesight problems or maybe they, excuse me, maybe even language problems?
There will be a number of language, I guess, interpretations. So the Census Bureau themselves provide a number of different language options. If you do it online, when you call in, they have translators they can connect you to. And we're still working as a committee and with the Census Bureau locally to try to find partners in the community that can provide this assistance in person. So we don't have that concrete information quite yet. I know we're partnering with the Lincoln Public Libraries. I've been in connection with some of our cultural centers to see if they can assist. Aging Partners, I know that we are available to answer questions always for anyone who has questions. If the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, if you're already a client of theirs, they have said they'd be willing to assist if needed with questions on the census as well.
We are an aging population.
We are.
And is it important, how is it important, I guess, for seniors to make sure they're counted and taken care of in this situation?
It is very important. Aging Partners is an area agency on aging. And so a large part of our funding comes from the federal government, from the Older Americans Act, and that has a formula within it that determines how much money each area agency on aging in Nebraska receives. And that all is determined by the 60 and older population that responds to the census. So if we have people who don't respond, then we could potentially miss out on that funding that then we can put towards Meals on Wheels, towards congregate meals at senior centers, towards transportation options, case management, legal services, information and referral. So all of those programs are wrapped into the Older Americans Act, and they're specifically impacted by this count.
And it's probably important to say that that funding is for the next 10 years.
It is.
So we would lose out on that funding over each year through the next 10 years.
Yep.
Have seniors traditionally responded well to the census?
They have. I've been out and about conducting a census bingo at many of our senior centers, which is a learning experience for me. I'm not a bingo player myself, so I've learned a lot. So I've received a lot of positive feedback from seniors, and typically I've received that most of them feel comfortable doing this via paper, so the mail-in option, the mail questionnaire. And also most people actually are really familiar with the process, why it's important, and a lot of them have worked for the census at some point. I've been very surprised how many people have been enumerators at some point in the past.
And Krista, you mentioned earlier on about some of the implications, but it's more than distribution of congressional seats and so on. Like you mentioned, it's funding for the next 10 years. Can you give us just a little sample of what that means?
Right. Well, I was thinking as I was driving here, if children are a population that is hard to count, oftentimes they do get missed for one reason or another. If you had a 4-year-old child about to start school, we would miss the funding that goes along with to our schools for almost that child's entire education, plus some of the services that child would get, you know, potentially Medicaid, Head Start, those sorts of things. We would miss opportunity for funding that goes along with that child for a good 10 years.
Interesting. Jenna, you mentioned about enumerators. Maybe you should open it up here. Are jobs available?
There are a number of jobs. So just locally here in Lincoln, they're going to be hiring about 3,500 people. I believe it's fairly flexible. It can be part-time, it can be evenings, full-time, weekends, and they're paying up to $21 an hour for the employees that they're hiring.
Well, that's maybe a good supplementary income for some people.
Absolutely. I know that there's been some seniors interested in that option.
And for both of you, anything you've missed here in terms of the importance of what's going on with the census or what people should be aware of?
Well, I think even beyond what we've talked about as far as the funding and being counted for redistricting for our electoral activities, even businesses are looking at those demographics, and so where do we stock what in our grocery stores, what services are needed in what communities, and so it goes beyond just the funding that we talked about.
And again, I think we need to emphasize this security here, especially in this day and age, is not going to be an issue with the census.
Right, and it's really interesting because the Census Bureau staff take a lifetime oath that they will not disclose any personal information to anybody who responds to the census. And they face I believe it's a $250,000 fine, up to 5 years in prison or both if they break that oath. And then also they do not disclose it to any law enforcement or any other government agencies. It is specifically for statistical purposes only.
Well, this has been very interesting. Thanks to both of you for bringing this information to us. We can look forward to doing this one way or another over the next few months.
Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Remember, it's never too late to live and learn about the census coming up this spring.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form, cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Hi everybody, my name's Kim Hachia. Welcome to Live and Learn. You know, Lincoln is blessed with having a really professional and progressive and efficient fire and rescue department, and it really enhances the quality of life for all of our residents. My guest today is Captain Nancy Christ, who is the Public Information Officer with Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and prior to her current position, she was a paramedic with the department. And we're going to chat about what the department is and what their work means for us as a community. And so welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know, I've heard that the vast majority of calls to Lincoln Fire and Rescue are not fire, but actually medical rescue. And last week you told me a really interesting statistic about the sort of how fire and rescue really has enhanced quality of life by helping people survive heart attacks and strokes and other situations. And I know that fire and rescue is really a robust player in that area. And so how have we achieved that? How does that work?
Probably the number one thing that we think of is our training. We have a pretty comprehensive training department when it comes to EMS, and we are data driven. We look at statistics. We look at ways to improve. Approximately a year and a half ago, we began to use high performance CPR. That's a different term than our lay folks would think about. And it just is kind of a team crew type mentality when it comes to cardiac arrest. Everyone on scene has a position. Everyone knows exactly what their job is, and we practice that way. And so it's in a very efficient way to do and to function in a cardiac arrest situation.
So let's say that I have to make a phone call because someone that I'm with has had a cardiac arrest. So what can I expect as you know, when a truck or engine company comes, and you know, what can I expect might happen?
So I guess the biggest thing to think about is that a lot of things are going to be happening in a really short period of time, and that can be intimidating and scary. So you can expect 4, 5, 6 people to come into your home, and everyone comes in and starts an assessment. There's usually one person that's asking questions, which we intentionally do, so it's not confusing for the patient. And then another person is taking your blood pressure. Someone else might be behind us talking to a family member about medications and medical history. So there's a lot of dynamics happening, and again, it can be kind of scary. What a person, a loved one, can do to kind of help is by maybe gathering the patient's medications and making sure that they kind of are aware of that loved one's medical history. That gives us an insight as to what might be happening with the patient at the time the 911 call is made.
Okay, I know that a lot of times people wonder, why do they send that big fire engine or that big fire truck? And you can explain what the difference is between the two of those versus just an ambulance when I make a rescue call. So why does that happen?
In the Lincoln system, we have 15 fire stations dotted across the city, soon to have 16. And at every single one of those fire stations is an engine company. An engine company has 4 personnel on it. There's a driver, the captain, there's a firefighter, and a firefighter paramedic. So, you know, think about how those are placed throughout the city, very strategically placed throughout the city. And anytime someone calls 911, we do activate that engine company because we can get to your house within 3 to 4 minutes. And we can begin that advanced life support care because we have a paramedic on that rig. And then the medic unit, because there's only 7 medic units in the city, those medic units then come, continue care, and transport to the hospital.
Okay, because sometimes you might not need that medic transport, right?
Yeah, there are situations whereby we have calls to help someone up off the floor. They may not even know whether they're injured or not. So we'll go, do that full assessment again, take vital signs, talk to the patient. If they wish to go to the hospital, we'll take them. If they don't want to go to the hospital and they're able to make that decision, in other words, they're conscious, alert, oriented, and able to answer all the questions appropriately, then we can sign a refusal and leave them at home.
I know that people might be reluctant to call because they're afraid they're going to incur a cost. And why don't you explain about what you pay for and what you don't?
Sure. So the citizens, the taxpayer dollars, pay for the fire service and that EMS piece where the engine company comes to your home. The ambulance service is actually its own entity. It's an enterprise fund that makes its own money and maintains itself. So the citizens are not actually paying for that service unless they use the service.
Okay.
And then it's a bill, appropriate to whatever that transport was.
Okay.
And it's put through Medicaid or Medicare or your insurance company and then paid for that way. So it's not a taxpayer.
Right. So people shouldn't be afraid
service.
to call because of the cost, right?
Never call. And, and the bottom line is if you're not sure, if you're just thinking, gosh, something doesn't seem to be right about mom or grandma, call us. We can help you make that educated decision whether a transport to the hospital is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know we had just a couple of minutes ago we talked about what people can do if somebody, if there's a situation, and you said that if you kind of know a medical background, it's helpful. And you have brought this thing called the File of Life, and let's talk a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so I talked about how it's so important to know kind of the medical history, and medications and allergies are important to know of your loved ones, because in an emergency, that individual may be unresponsive. Mm-hmm. They may not be able to answer questions for us. So we recommend that you use this File of Life, and it's just basically a magnet that can be put on your fridge. It has a magnetic strip, and then it has a folder inside. And this has a line for name and medications, allergies, dosages included. We want to know exactly how much they're taking. I can look at this as a paramedic. We can look at this list and get a pretty good idea of what that patient history is. Mm-hmm. And then we know how to navigate that call and that assessment.
Right.
So we recommend that people fill those out in full, and if there's changes, make those changes on it too.
Yeah. And I know that there's a limited number of these are available through Aging Partners, but also we can get them through the Lincoln Fire and Rescue.
Yep. Lincoln Fire and Rescue stocks them as well, and we also usually have them on every rig in the city.
Oh,
so, if somebody knows of them and would like one, don't hesitate to call the fire department and ask.
Wow, interesting. So we are, as we're talking today and taping, this is the first kind of snowy, crazy day for Lincoln's weather. Mm-hmm. So how does that affect Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and how, do you guys anticipate different kinds of calls as we go through winter in different parts of I know you guys are real data driven, so I know you know this.
Yes, so that's an awesome question. And the way we prepare in situations where we have snow, ice, sleet, this kind of weather pending, we may deploy additional resources. Sometimes we will put an additional medic unit in service, and sometimes an additional engine company in service, just for additional coverage throughout the city. Mm-hmm. But as you know, we're here 24/7, every day of the week. So we just kind of ramp up. We may put a shovel in the back of the compartment where we are in the rig, so that if we've got to maybe do a little shoveling to get up to the front door of a home, we have the resources to do that. So, and salt, we always have salt or high dry with us to lay down, just to make sure that the services are safe for us to get up to a patient.
Right, because it's not just patient safety, but it's also safety of your personnel,
right.
Because it doesn't do you guys any good to have somebody fall and get a concussion while they're trying to deal with some other individual, and that just sort of makes the problem worse. Yeah.
That's exactly right, and that's a really good point to bring up. I think when people are experiencing an emergency, it's scary, and we understand and appreciate that. And when we arrive on scene, I think the mentality is hurry up, get in. We don't run anywhere. We don't run up to the house. We very methodically gather our equipment and come up to the incident or to the house. And sometimes people perceive that as, gosh, why aren't they hurrying? We have to be safe, and we have to make sure that we get there safely, right. Because we can't help you if we're injured. So everything that we do is very intentional.
Mm-hmm. I had sort of made the assumption, which when you chatted later, that maybe as we have more and more assisted living units in Lincoln, that the calls are changing. But you said that really the #1 area for calls is kind of the downtown inner campus area because of population density. But are the nature of calls changing? Have you seen that over the years? And you know, do you have to train differently because you're going to different types of calls?
So that is a good point, and I like that you mentioned that really the concentration of a lot of our call volume is in the downtown area. It's more densely populated, especially during the day when everybody's at work, but also just the socioeconomic piece of some of the downtown areas kind of dictates some of that. You know, I talk about how everybody's trained equally in the same, but definitely the areas of town change the type of call that we go on. For instance, downtown it may be slips, trips, falls, those types of calls, or folks that are out in the cold, in the elements. On the east side of town, you know, you think about more assisted living facilities or nursing homes. So you know, for instance, if you're working at Station 7, just north of Bryan Hospital, you know that the large majority of your calls are going to be to facilities. You know, so we're going inside every time. Right. The calls on in the downtown area, they're probably getting out and they may be spending some time in the elements. So those types of things are definitely considerations that we think about.
Right, and I bet you do have to watch the weather and all those kind of situations, or if there's going to be a big event, you have to be prepared to put on the staffing.
Yeah, you know, game days are a good example of that. We increase volume on game days. And so we usually have an incident action plan just for that game day. And deploying our resources accordingly. Everything's data driven. Everything that we do is an intentional placement of a rig or an apparatus. Everything we do. So.
Well, that's great. That, you know, as a citizen, that makes me feel safer, and it's kind of nice to know that that you guys are very data driven and very professional and train a lot, because I feel like we're getting our good bang for our buck. So,
yeah, I hope so.
So Nancy, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope people think about getting one of these files of life. And thanks a lot. And I want to remind our viewers that it's never too late to live and learn.